Scarcity asks, what can we cut? Growth asks, what can this investment produce?
Fundraising should be going to furthering the ministry, not covering the operating expenses.
Good leadership doesn't just protect resources, it puts them to work.
One thing we can guarantee is you will not get growth if you don't invest your marketing dollars somewhere.
Hey, welcome to the Grow Your Camp podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Carl.
And together, we share practical ideas and stories and systems to help your camp grow. Because here's something Carl and I both believe pretty strongly. You can't minister to empty beds. And today, we may step on a few toes. Because I think the number one reason many camps don't grow, it's not a lack of demand. It isn't competition. It isn't even the economy. Here's what I think it is. Leader, it's fear. Fear of spending money. Fear of making the wrong investment. Fear of having to explain to a board why the marketing budget went up. And sometimes we call that being responsible. But I'd like to challenge that today. Good leadership doesn't just protect resources. It puts them to work. Scarcity asks, what can we cut? Growth asks, what can this investment produce? Because while everyone is staring at the cost of marketing, almost nobody is calculating the cost of doing nothing. Because an empty cabin has a cost. An unused retreat weekend has a cost. And a phone that isn't ringing has a cost. Empty beds aren't free. So today, Carl and I are going to wrestle with a question I think every camp leader, every board member, even donors ought to be asking. What is staying the same costing us? And if your camp has room to grow, how much should you be willing to invest to capture that opportunity? And we're going there today. It could get dicey, but first, Carl's got a really practical marketing tip that might help you figure out whether the money you're already spending is actually working. Carl?
Today's quick camp marketing tip. You want to know if your marketing is working? Don't guess, just ask. So here is the cheapest marketing tracking tool available. Ask every new inquiry, how did you hear about us? It is as simple as that. Every time someone calls, wants to talk about booking a retreat, wants to talk about signing up their kid for camp, if not your first question, the second question ought to be, hey, I'm curious, how'd you hear about us? It sounds almost too simple, but if you consistently ask that question and record the answer, you're going to start seeing patterns. You're going to start seeing which marketing efforts are actually bringing people to your camp and which ones are just burning money in the back. You don't need an expensive CRM. You don't need a complicated attribution system to get started. You just need to simply start consistently asking the question, hey, I'm curious, how'd you hear about us? Let's just talk about a couple ways to do this practically. On your website, every single person on this phone has a function on their website or on this call, not on the phone, on this on this video, watching this podcast or listen to this podcast. Every camp has a website, and on that website, I'm willing to bet every single one of you at least has a contact form. And many of you have a dedicated retreat inquiry form or a camp registration form. And you have control on what those forms say. So you can just simply add another field on that form that says, how did you hear about us? And you could just leave it open-ended, but even better than that would be make it easy to fill out. Give them a drop-down list where they have to pick from some choices and put the choices in there on the things that you're doing. Online search, social media, word-of-mouth referral, billboard, email. You know what kind of things you're investing in marketing in. You know the kind of places people are finding you. Make a simple list. Give them a choice. When someone calls, You're not going to ask, you're going to list those things and tell them to pick one. You just ask them, how did you find us? But when they tell you, you can then pick which category. You can put that in the log or put that in your system. And what's even better is when you're talking to them on the phone, you can even ask them things like if they said, "Hey, I found you through an online search," or "I found you on Google." "Hey, do you remember what you searched?" Or if they said, "I saw you on social media." "Hey, do you remember what post that was? What platform were you on?" Or if they said, "Oh, I heard about you from a friend." "Oh, who was that? Was that somebody at church? Was it somebody at a business?" And write down those notes. Those extra details can help you understand not just which channels are working, which sources or which ways that business is coming to you, but specifically what caused someone to notice. Like, wouldn't it be gold to find out that a particular social media post drove 15 phone calls this week? Or that a particular ad you're running on Google or somewhere else actually is leading to phone calls? Like, wouldn't that be exciting to say, hey, we could put some more money there and stop putting money on this ad that no one has mentioned in the last 6 months? So, best practices, ask every new inquiry, not just occasionally. Consistency is what makes this information useful. And make sure you're logging this information in a place where it can be found. If you have a CRM where you're already tracking inquiries, put it there. You have a spreadsheet where you're tracking stuff like this, put it there. If you don't have any of those things, just get a clipboard with a sheet of paper, lined paper, and start writing them down. And then the last thing maybe sounds too simple, but look at the data. Once a week, once a month, check it out. What's it telling you? So, yeah, you don't need, I mean, there are all kinds of other ways to do this stuff, like Mark and his team and me and my team. Should we work together with you? We're going to help you put sophisticated systems in place like Google Analytics and CRM and connect those things together so that you can track where every single dollar is going and how much those dollars are returning to you. But you don't need some fancy system or to wait for some big agency to come install this for you. You can start getting answers today by simply asking the people who are inquiring, hey, I'm curious. How'd you hear about us? And keeping track of those answers. So put that in practice today. And hey, drop us a line. Let us know what you're learning from it.
Yeah, Carl, thank you. That is by far the most inexpensive way to figure out how your marketing dollars are working. Now, yes, we can do a lot more with analytics, but I know when I was leading Sandy Cove for like actually it was leading me. I I asked registrars to ask how'd you hear about us, and it wasn't precise, but it was helpful for sure. It was helpful. So yeah. All right, Carl, you ready to get into some crazy? Because I'm worked up. I am worked up. We don't even have a guest today. Carl and I were
Yeah.
talking, and and I was so worked up. He's like, "Okay, maybe we should do a podcast." Here we
Yeah. I
are.
mean, this really came out of a conversation we were having earlier this week. And Margaret was just kind of sharing some stories and, if I can say, some frustrations, some ideas, some challenges. Um, and I think really it illustrates a tension that most camp leaders listening to this are facing or have faced or facing right now or will face soon in the future. And it's really that tension between protecting resources and investing in growth. We've all heard the saying, and we've all probably even repeated the saying, you got to spend money to make money. But it's real easy to say when you're saying it to someone else. It's not usually, it's hard to live by when it's our dollars that are going out the door. So, Mark, I'm excited to get into this. Before we kind of get into the meat of it, though, just curious, how's your week going?
Oh man, dude, it's been a hard week. It's been a really, really hard week, and
Mm,
I think the core, as I've sat with what's been happening, is we've had three new camp clients ask us to do an audit to give them a path. And when we give them the path, they're like, how much? And the next phrase is, well, how are we supposed to pay for that? And the next phrase is, well, maybe the kid that just graduated from college with a marketing degree could build the website. And And I think what it, I get it. I run a business. You run a business. We want to invest our money in things that we think will work. But here's what I'm finding with nonprofit leaders. And I want you desperately, leader, if you're listening to this, ask yourself this question. Am I a growth minded leader or am I a scarcity minded leader? Am I going to invest to grow or am I going to say, hey, everybody, work harder to get better results? I'm paying less money. I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but that's literally what I heard this week. And I'm like, how are we going to help leaders grow if they're not willing to see their responsibility is not to protect the money, it's to produce the mission. It's not just to protect the money, it's to produce the mission.
Mark, what do you think is behind that? I mean, I think, like I said, the phrase "you got to spend money to make money" is a pretty common one. I think we all understand what's behind that. But what you're saying is, you're showing someone a plan to get where they want to go, right? They're targeting some revenue growth. You're giving them a plan to show that, but that growth isn't free, and nobody thought it was free. But when you look at the price tag, there that big gulp is, oh, that's a lot bigger than what I thought it was going to be, or that's a lot bigger than what I have sitting in the account for this, or sometimes I know I run into this. We've never invested in this before. We don't know what it should cost. But even though we don't know, we've made up a number in our minds, and that number is bigger than the one we made up, right? And so, but you're also, I think I know how you do this. You're showing them not just the cost, but you're showing them the growth. So maybe you're showing them a budget that's $120,000, but you're also showing them a revenue growth number that's $1 million higher than what it was before. Um, so what
Here's
do
the
you
number
think
one
is
reason.
what's behind
Here's
that?
the number one reason. Camp leaders are not business people. When I surveyed and thought through my career and the career of many of my clients, it's this. That person usually came through ministry, through church, through youth ministry, through pick your ministry vertical, and they are then hired to run a business. They they don't have the experience or training to run a business. And listen, that's not a slight on ministry. That's just an awareness that business people know that their job's not to just protect the money, it's to produce results, to produce mission. And so I think it's these people coming through ministry that are leading a business. And I had one client say, "Well, we like to talk about ministry and not money." And another person says, "Well, why don't we call it monastery, ministry
Hmm.
and money together?" I thought that was funny, but I think that's the
Yeah, I
number
think
one reason.
Yeah, I think, what's interesting, like church ministry, right? Like there's money involved there too, but often the money and the ministry are kind of somewhat separated, kind of church and state. Like we collect donations, people donate, that helps fund the ministry, but then the ministry happens over here. There's not usually a direct tie-in, right? I'm not paying the pastor $200 to pray for me when I'm in the hospital, right? But camp's a little different. It is ministry, but there's a transaction that's happening, right? Mom signing up,
Yes.
child for camp, paying $1,200. Johnny stays at camp for the next 7 days and experiences the ministry at camp. But Johnny can't experience that week at camp, nor can the other 100 kids that week without paying for the staff and the facilities and the food and all that stuff. And so there's a direct transaction there that's happening. So I think that's what you're really getting at with this is a business. So it is
Yeah,
a
we got
ministry. It is a
we got to sell
ministry, but
something.
yeah, it's a business and that it's got to cover its expenses or more, right?
And listen,
Um,
this is not isolated, Carl, to just nonprofits or ministry.
mm,
Corporate America also is driven by fear. Um, Years ago, I read a book a friend of mine gave me. By the way, one of my mentors once said that 5 years from today, you and I are going to be the same person except for two things: the books we read and the people we meet. Well, years ago, a friend of mine handed me a book called Same Kind of Different as Me. It's a beautiful story, painful, about a couple in Texas. Husband is an international art dealer. The wife starts helping serving at rescue missions, homeless shelters. And the story unfolds into this remarkable story about caring for those without judgment. And it revolutionized how I look at the homeless, those experiencing homelessness, as well as just any category. And the book got bought and optioned, and Paramount bought it. And I worked with Paramount and PureFlix to get the movie out into the universe, same kind of different as me. Jaimin Hunsu acted, Greg Kinnear, Renee Zellweger. It was a star-studded cast, and it was a delight to work on the movie. But every time I brought an idea to Paramount, that what emotion, what was behind every decision was fear. If we try that and it doesn't work, it's going to cost us money. I get it. 100% get it. And that's why we do tests in small doses to see what works and what doesn't. And then when it starts to work, then we add more money and more resources. Fear is real.
Where does, maybe this is just, I'd be interested in your perspective on this, Mark. Like if I were to answer that question about why people are struggling with, I think one perspective is they look at marketing as a cost. We would suggest it's better to look at it as an investment, particularly when you're looking at the return. But faced with spend $10,000, get $100,000, that seems like almost too good to be true. Like, why would you not make that investment? I get your point that fear might be driving that decision. Where does trust fall in there? Because I find like one way to overcome that fear has been building trust. And what I mean, and to some degree you mentioned that because you talked about testing, like test, maybe you say trust but verify, like test it a little bit. That helps build trust.
That's exactly what I would have said. I would have just called on Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. So where does trust come in? Well, it starts with, how is trust built? By doing what you're going to say. If you say, I'll meet you at 3 and you don't show up at 3, I'm going to have a hard time trusting your words. So trust is built by doing what we say. So in the case of marketing, I'm going to give you an illustration of a client. And this is a established many-year ministry, camping ministry. And they asked us to focus on a certain area of their organization. And we went in and we said, well, I think we can help you grow. How about we test a bunch of things and see what works? And they're like, well, how much? And we give a number, and they said, okay, let's try it. And so we started doing it, but it started working to the point of when they gave us $100, we gave them back 1,000 in verified sales. When I say verified, we ran Google ads and Meta ads. Those ads had tracking. When it went into the website and someone said purchase, we knew through analytics that was a sale, and we could show them the cost. Okay, you give us 1,000, we give you 10,000 back. How much more money do you want to give us? And they're like, well, it's not in the budget. No, but that extra 10,000 we just brought you wasn't in the budget either. So it's a fixed scarcity mindset of financial people within organizations that say it's not in the budget because they think it's an expense. Don't go out and buy that new mattress. It's not in the budget. Yes, but people are telling us the mattresses are hard and they don't want to rebook. Put it in next year's budget. Do we really have to wait until next year when our customer is telling us they don't want that? But it's a fixed mindset of budgets. Don't go over budget. And here's the other thing. I found myself saying, the only reason you should go over budget is because we're bringing more people, so you have more food costs and more staff costs. Go over budget in those areas. So it's that fixed mindset of a kind of a very stagnant budget way of doing business. I can tell you that client began to give us more money, and we brought in $1 million in to the organization and it cost them less than 150.
Mm. Mark, this reminds me of a phrase I've heard you use before. I think you called it the stewardship paradox, is what I think you said. Like basically the idea that we are responsible for stewarding the money we have, particularly maybe so for as a Christian ministry, but are we also just as responsible for the revenue that we could have created with that? I think of the parable of the talents, right? You have the one who got the 10 talents and he invested it and got 20 back and he was rewarded. You had the other guy who had 5 talents. He invested it, he got 10 back. He was rewarded. And then you had the guy who got 1 talent and he wasn't sure he could make money with it. So he just buried it and said, "Hey, I kept your talent. I didn't lose any money." And he got punished, right? Basically, the idea they were being, uh, they were expected to be fruitful. They were expected to reap a reward out of that and make money out of that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've come to hate the word stewardship because it's so
Mm.
churchy. Okay. And
Yeah.
we're running a business. It's a nonprofit business. And the paradox for me is that if I'm making wise decisions and we're testing things, then I am a good steward if I invest more into that. I am a good leader. I am a good business leader. The talent, the parable of the talents, what does that really teach us as leaders of organizations? Question for you.
Mm.
What is that person that buried the talent? What is the universal principle that
Mm.
is maybe we can pull from this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have it in front of me, so I don't have the master of that scenario, the one that was handing out the money, went away for a trip. I just remember that, he was angry. I mean, what I would say is the person who hid the money was a fearing, he basically said, "I know that you're a very demanding person, and you would have been angry if I'd have lost the money." So, basically, it was fear that was
Hmm.
controlling it. Now what's interesting is all 3 of those stewards, if you will, all
Hmm.
3 of them served the same master, so they would have observed similar things, but 1 out of the 3 of them took it a very different way. 1 out of the 3 of them received it in a different way. They saw him as demanding and, uh, reacted out of
They
fear.
maybe they are fair too, and they're going to multiply the money
Mhm.
better. But
Yeah, that's interesting.
the one that hid it reminds me of a story when I had become the president of a camp retreat organization. And we had signs all over camp that said, "Don't go here, don't play, don't skateboard, don't fish, don't skip rocks." I mean, there were no signs everywhere.
Hmm.
And I wanted us to be a yes camp. I wanted when people show up that they are welcomed and appreciated and valued and encouraged. And all the no signs were antithetical to that. So I went to this person and I said, "Hey, what's up with the no signs?" He goes, "Well, I'm responsible to take care of the grass, and if people drive on the grass, then, I'm not being a good steward of the grass." I said, "What else?" He goes, "Well, these crazy kids, they put a hole in the drywall. That costs us money." And I said, "Do you know what that hole in the drywall is?" And I was snarky, so I'm not saying this is the best thing ever. I said, "That was a result. That hole was the result of ministry. If we didn't have that hole, that probably meant we didn't have a guest. If we didn't have a guest, we had an empty bed. If we had an empty bed, there was no ministry." So there is a cost to ministry. But if we tell everybody, don't do things, bury our talent, see, look, but we have nobody to serve, like exactly what part of that equation makes sense?
Mark, we've talked about this a little bit. We've threw out some quick examples, but let's put some numbers around this. If a camp is generating, I mean, a lot of camps, I forget the percentage, but it's a pretty significant percentage of camps are doing at least $1 million a year in revenue. Um, but I know when we run the numbers on camp capacity, most camps have the ability to double where they're currently at. They have the
Sure.
capacity to do 2 to 3 times more than what they're doing today. So let's just use a simple example, rounded numbers. A camp's doing about 1,000,000. They could be doing 1.5 million. How should a leadership team think about what it's willing to invest to pursue that additional 500,000 in sales?
There, I use a simple mathematical equation, and it is expect to spend 10 to 12% of the gross revenue that you hope to achieve on marketing. If you want $1,000,000, put $100,000 in marketing. Put 120 in marketing. That
It's pretty
time,
simple.
it actually is very simple from a mathematical equation. I had a client whose um, whose leadership said, "Hey, we want to put another $1,000,000 in next year's budget." But and so the question was, well, how much are we going to invest in marketing? Well, just get it without spending money. What kind of leadership is that? Well, how the question is from, and I've sat in that CEO's chair. The question is, what do you need? What do you need
Yeah.
to get to that $1,000,000 mark? And, some people can say 10 to 12% because they have experience. Some say, I don't know yet, but I'll find out. And they hire, us to do an audit. And we go in there and we go, hey, you have 50% capacity. But look at this weekend right here. You're only at 62%, and you say you're full 62%. You still have room for 38% more people, but you call it full. And so, what is that going to take? Well, it's going to take playing a Tetris. You remember the old Tetris game where the blocks are coming down and we're moving it around while real life is happening. And you're trying to not get killed. That's every day for every high demand weekend. So sometimes you don't have to spend more money. You just have to be strategic about the demand. And
Yeah.
I want to add this too. I had I was looking at a client's guest group bookings. It was 55. It was almost 55% of their gross revenue. And they said, yeah, we're full. Like we're booking 85% rebooking. I was like, holy cow, I got to find how you get into 85. Carl, you and I always say 60 to 80. They're at 85. And they began to tell me, yeah, we're full. We're turning away. We probably only close 20% of the leads that we get. Our goal is 40. And I'm thinking, you're turning people away. You have all this demand. Raise your rates. Raise your rates. Reward the early. Raise your
Yeah.
rates. What's the natural scarcity mindset? Fear they'll lose customers. And that the reality is some people won't be able to afford that. And that's when you come forward and say, hey, but if you can't afford it, we do have a scholarship fund if you need some help. How much do you need? If you can't spend $800, how much do you need? Well, I can spend 700. All right, we have donors that'll make up the difference for you. And on weekends, if it's an October weekend, it's the highest demand. You've turned away, 16 churches. You need to start raising your prices. And those people who are turned away will have an opportunity to come in, but it is at a higher price. So many people who run nonprofit organizations, especially camps, believe if I keep the cost down, we can serve more people. But every year, that same employee says, what's my raise? What's my cost of living raise? And I have seen camps that they won't charge what it costs. There's another frustration I had this week. Can you tell? I'm worked up. Good heavens. I had one camp have me analyze their situation. And I said, I've looked at your numbers and it looks like you're charging $825 for a week of camp, but it's costing you $1,140.
Whoa.
And they're like, wow, we didn't know it was that much. And just simply opening the hood and looking at the numbers, I was able to evaluate. And I said, well, how do you expect to offset that? And then like donors.
Hmm.
Do you think every person needs a scholarship? Oh no. But you're universally giving it to everyone by a discount. You're artificially deflating the cost to the customer because you're afraid that people who can't afford it won't come. But you have a outlet over here called scholarship funds. You don't have one of my favorite things on all my camp websites is don't let finances keep you away from experiencing God at camp. We have
Mhm.
scholarships. And then I'm told, well, yeah, but we've talked to some people and they're going to be too proud to ask for a scholarship. So they're not going to come. Well, sorry, that's your problem. That's on you, not me. I can't fix your problem of pride. But I do have to charge what it costs. And one day I had a marketing person say to me, I'm afraid if we raise the prices, we're going to lose customers. I said, I understand that. I said, what kind of car do you drive? She said, a Toyota Corona. I said, well, it's Friday, so we've got 500 people checking in. Let's go in the parking lot and find out what kind of cars our guests who are paying us $250 for a weekend are driving. And what were they driving? Lexuses, Mercedes, 50, 60, $80,000 cars. We set prices based on our budget and scarcity mindset instead of what it costs to run the organization, fund depreciation, pay people a living wage. Like we have to think like this. Ah,
Yeah, if we wanna retain good people, we gotta pay them good wages, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
a biblical concept too, right? The workers do his wages. And, uh, and we wanna provide a good experience, and we want a sustainable organization that can continue providing that experience and better experiences over the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? A lot of camps are celebrating 70 years, 80 years, 50 years,
Yeah.
30 years. Like, they've already got a legacy, but there's a lot more years to go, right? Yeah, we gotta cover those costs.
Charge
Uh,
what it costs with a profit, with a margin, whatever words you want to use. If it costs you 1,000, charge 1,500 and fund your depreciation from that $500 difference and increase the wages of your employees. I asked every employee a series of 5 questions. What do you love? What do you wish can change? What do you hope doesn't change? What do you think we ought to focus on next? So, and you know what I discovered? Like 30% of my staff was on was on government assistance, food stamps. And I said, when was the last time you got a raise? And they go, a couple of years. Um, and I thought, oh, I get it. This is how we recruit. Hey, you want to join the ministry? It's going to be a sacrifice. I know you can make $100,000 in the market, but we're paying 50. I know you have 3 kids. I know you value homeschooling. So you can live on the property, which in essence means cheaper labor. You build no net worth because eventually you're not going to work at camp. You suppress the earning potential of someone who is sacrificing for the mission, and you call that ministry. What? I don't call that ministry. I call that abuse. I call that manipulation to make people sacrifice their own health and go on government assistance in the name of ministry. Come on, man. Let's not be like that. Let's pay people well. Charge what it takes to deliver the beautiful, amazing service of outdoor adventures in your camps, retreats, and conference centers because people need it now more than ever. They are so addicted to their screens. Let's call them into nature, but let's not do it at the expense of somebody who's having to go on government assistance that's on your payroll.
so, Mark, it strikes me that one of the ways to help solve that problem, I mean, it's easy to say, hey, let's pay people more, but we got to have the funds to do that, right? And I know we probably share a value that fundraising should be going to furthering the ministry, not covering the operating expenses.
Amen. Say it
And
again.
I
Say it
said,
again.
fundraising should be going to furthering the ministry, not covering operating expenses. The solution to covering operating expenses is filling your capacity. The solution for filling your capacity, right, is growth. And so at the top of this episode, we started with this idea that we got to stop treating marketing as a cost to be reduced or a cost to be feared. We got to start looking at it as an investment in our growth. So we've got to have that trust that we're going to do marketing responsibly. We're going to treat it like an investment. We're going to expect growth. We're going to look for that growth. We're going to reward the things that are growing, and we're going to pull back from the things that aren't. But all of that, it is implicit when we're talking about those things that, okay, we're going to trust that if we spend money over here, it's going to make more money. But it doesn't always work out that way, right? Spending money doesn't automatically make something a good investment. That's where that it takes money to make money, or you got to spend money to make money. That's the fallacy of that adage, right? Because you got to put your money in the right places for it to make money, right? So so my question is, like, I actually, I don't know. I've certainly experienced some situations like you've shared today, but I would say just as common, if not, in my experience, maybe even more common, is people that kind of understand it's going to take some investment to get this growth, but they're not. This is why This is why I used that word trust earlier. Like, how can a camp really evaluate whether this marketing is going to produce the kind of growth that justifies investing in it? Like, how can they make that decision?
You hire people that have succeeded in the past at the same thing you want them to do for you.
Mm.
You hire people who are experienced in the past doing what you want them to do, and they have had success and failure. To hire a kid out of college with a marketing degree and say, build a website on Wix because we don't have money for a website, that's not stewardship. That's stupidity.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're not really saying, hey, hire us as an agency instead of the kid out of college who's available. That's not really the issue. It's not what it is it comes back to trust. Hire someone you can trust to get the job done because they've done it before. That's a way to secure your investment, right? You don't invest your money with some kid or some guy. We shouldn't make it about age, right? Just some guy who says, "Hey, I got an idea. I want to try something. I think it's going to work really well."
Give me
Uh, you know,
$10,000.
right. But
Yeah.
if you're going to take your retirement dollars and put them somewhere they're going to grow, I mean, I think I can be pretty confident in saying most of us are going to put that money in places that have a demonstrated. I mean, I know how I did that. I talked to a couple of people, and I talked with someone who was level-headed and had decades of history getting a certain return on investment. And I said, "Okay, I know there's no guarantees, but there's a track record here that suggests, history doesn't always predict the future, but history is a much better predictor for the future than nothing." Right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so I think that's at the heart of what you're saying is it's not about, hey, hire me, Mark, because I'm an agency. It's, hey, find someone who's already been down that path enough times that they know what things to avoid, they know what things to do, they know when to wait, they know when to run, they can demonstrate the results, which doesn't mean it's always going to go perfectly. That's why I like to think about it as an investment. Every investment has some risk associated with it. But if you work with people who are responsible and have a track record of success, you're much more likely to get a good return than just
Yes.
kinda throwing it out there, and what we can say for sure is you will not get any return if you don't invest it somewhere.
Say it again.
I said, "What one thing we can guarantee is you will not get growth if you don't invest your marketing dollars somewhere." So I would actually argue that everyone listening on this call, you do have a marketing budget. You're spending it somewhere else right now.
Okay. Let's go even further.
Mm.
So you're a camp director and you say, well, I need to hire a marketing director on our staff. Great. Who are you going to choose? Well, Johnny came through the CIT program and he's got a great heart. Maybe we should have him do it. Would you also have him plan your meals and cook them? Would you have them do your accounting? No. So, camp leader, hire a marketing director that has experience in what we call the dump tax. I tried this, it didn't work. I tried this, it worked. Let's do more of that. And make sure, as Patrick Lencioni would say, that they're hungry, humble, and smart. Humble, they ask questions, they learn, they're hungry, they're ambitious, they want results, and they're smart, not just intellectually, but emotionally smart to interact with people. Um, I, I remember I was reading or listening to Michael Hyatt. Michael, you ever heard of Michael Hyatt? He wrote leadership books, and he was the president of a publishing company. Anyway, I was into his stuff, and that's a great way to put it. I was into his stuff for a minute. I was into his stuff. Um, but one of the things that influenced me significantly as a business owner myself was stop doing $10 an hour jobs at your hourly wage. Hire somebody else to do that. To use your expertise toward the things that have the greatest return. Same thing with camp. Hire people who know how to take $1,000 and make it 10,000. And if you don't have the people, go recruit them. And if you can't recruit them, hire us.
That's good.
It's like,
I would
I'm
say
not
that's
afraid to say that.
yeah. And I would say the other limitation, beyond experience is, I mean, here's, I guess, another thing I'd want camp leaders to wrestle with. Uh, a single marketing person, the idea that one marketing person can be your graphic designer, your storyteller, your community builder, your website builder, your advertising expert.
Oh, you're winding me up
Um,
again.
uh, we call that a unicorn, right? We're not hiring a person, we're looking for a unicorn. And we say that for a reason. Every once in a while, we run into a unicorn, right? But they're hard to find. And what else is true about hiring unicorns?
Expensive.
Yeah. So that is another reason. I know it may sound like a shameless plug. We're not actually plugging inspiring growth or improve and grow here in this conversation. What we're recommending, what we're advising is hire a team that has the experience before you go build a team. Because the reality is you need a team to do all those things. And some
Yes.
camps you have a team, and that's awesome. We are not suggesting that's a bad thing. I would actually argue in an ideal world, every camp would have a team that has the skill sets you need to be the best at what you're doing. And you do it all in house because every one of them bleed camp. That is the ideal. But let's not pretend that that ideal is a reality for most, at least in the immediate term. And let's just talk about what are other options to get to work towards the ideal.
Okay.
And
I want to, I
it's
want
not
to,
that doesn't usually look like hiring a unicorn. So
no, it doesn't. But I will tell you, camp leader, who to hire. I'm going to tell you exactly who to hire. And this you can take to the bank. You're not hiring a specialist, copywriter, photographer, graphic designer, videographer. You're hiring a air traffic controller who keeps 6 planes in the air without crashing. That's a copywriter. That's a salesperson. That's a videographer. That's a social media person. If you hire a player coach, you will kill them and you will not get the results you want. A player coach is designing, writing, copying, taking pictures, posting social, plus working with the digital marketing company, plus producing videos. I already have several clients who's like, I'm in my weekly cone of silence with these leaders and they are about to explode from health issues. Why? Because they're expected to be a player coach. Why? You're just chewing people up. An air traffic controller is someone that understands we need $1 million. We have 5 levers to pull. I'm going to find an expert who can pull this one and this one. I'm going to contract for this one. I do have someone who can do this over here. And then you become a project manager, air traffic controller, who looks at a report every single week to know what's working, what's not. And I know we have an episode coming up on status reports, which that's one of those tools that a good air traffic control marketing person has. Now, I'm going to ask a trick question, and it completely frustrated an organization. But I got in front of an organization one time. It was a hospitality organization. And I said, here's my definition of marketing: getting and keeping guests. Getting and keeping guests. So everyone in this room, there was probably about 120 people. Can the people who are responsible for marketing please stand? And you know who stood? The marketing department. And then I said, getting and keeping customers. And then one by one, maintenance, food service, guest services started standing. Why? Because marketing isn't just getting a new person in the door, it's keeping them for 5 years. And unless leaders are teaching their people that everyone's responsible for marketing, getting and keeping guests, then you create silos. Food service, terrible food, marketing. Well, we're losing business because food service. Well, it's not my job to get people. Keep them. Make them happy. Okay. All right. I'm getting work.
Well, I liked what you said, though. You said, don't hire the specialist, hire the air traffic controller. So
Mm-hmm.
don't put somebody in a marketing role because they're really good at photography or really good at graphic design or have a passion around copywriting. Copywriting is a part of marketing. It is marketing, but a copywriter might not be the best person to be pulling levers on Google Ads.
Or
Your
even know
Google
how
Ads,
to pull levers on your
yeah.
Google Ads.
And frankly, your Google Ads person probably shouldn't be in Canva building your next flyer for the camp. It can
It's
happen.
funny.
It can happen, but
It can
probably
happen,
not.
but okay. So somebody on my team, his name is Jeff Dickey. He is a Google guru. I said to him, I want you to be on an episode with Carl and I to talk about everything that we're talking about right now. He goes, that's your job. I just go, I'm in the belly of the whale pulling levers. You don't want me essentially learning Canva and putting social posts. I'm watching the statistical data and modifying campaigns and looking at the results and putting more money over here. Yeah, you can't ask one person to do everything. That's why your Improve and Grow team has specialists. In a lot of ways, you're the air traffic controller for your organization. Same with me. I refer to myself as the chief encourager. I mean, who doesn't want to be encouraged? And yet these days I feel like I'm the chief grump.
Mm.
I'm so exhausted trying to help ministry leaders be responsible business people and not run away underneath the guise of a spiritual excuse like, well, God's going to take care of it. Yeah. But if we use the talents illustration, he ain't when you stick it in the ground. Empty beds, no ministry. And here's the thing. You don't just throw $100,000 at an idea. You test it. You don't just send one email out. You send two, one to half an audience, one to another. Which one works? You don't just build a meta campaign on a single image. You do remarketing with videos and images because that person opened it. And it happens to us on Facebook. I clicked on a shoe thing and all of a sudden I'm getting fed shoe things. Why? Because the algorithms are watching our behavior and they're testing our actions. That's what we're talking about here. One of my clients, I think he's 68, maybe 70, and I'm turning 65 this year. He goes, "Mark, aren't you tired of learning all this new technology?" And I said, "Yes. I wish I didn't have to have a tech stack that had 16 different logins. Freaking took me an hour and a half this morning to figure out what my social security login was because it locked me out because of password issues. It exhausts me. But you know it doesn't exhaust me? Testing to find things that work. Test. It's the 4-letter word. Some think it's a cuss word. But remember back in the day before technology was advanced as us, the admin, what was that ad agency show?
Mad Men.
Basically,
Yeah.
Mad Men, yeah. So you basically had a bunch of creatives coming up with an idea, pitching it to the client, and they go, "That's a great idea, go." Well, usually the most creative and the most outgoing person won the argument about what was the best idea, right? Yep. Now it's no longer creative driving it, it's data. And if you don't keep your eyes on the data, and if we spend this, so I had one client that said, "Okay, we're going to give you this, it's like $60,000 and tell me what you can do with it. And if it works, it's great." It not only it worked way beyond even our imagination. Like we were getting 13 ROAS. Like it was crazy. And they're like, "Here's some more money. Keep doing that. Like dance, monkey dance." But they had to convince a scarcity minded, fixed, budget conscious CFO that we have to go over budget to get more money.
Yeah. Well, and I liked your point about testing because another way to test is start small, which I think is kind of what you mean by testing. But like your camp probably doesn't need to go from spending 0 on marketing or 50,000 on marketing to 200,000. That's too big of a leap. But maybe you earmark some money, and also you shouldn't be trying to take the little budget you have and spread it across 18 different things.
Heck no. Please
It
don't
is
do
not
that.
a good, probably not a good idea to put all your eggs in one basket, but it is also not a good idea to spread them all in different baskets, right? So somewhere in the middle, try 2 or 3 things and test them all, monitor them all, check them all. And the reality is you test 3 things, more likely than not, one of those 3 things is going to work well. The other 2 aren't. You got to get and you got to give it enough time to work, but then you got to call it when it doesn't, right? You can't just keep doing the 3 things
Right.
because we decided to do the 3 things, right?
So what would a thing be that you would test? Like for me, it would be rebooking, whether it's an individual summer camper or even a group who brought 100. You test an early bird offer. So it's not expensive. So like I had a camp in Southern California and I'm invited annually to their board meeting and we were sitting around talking and I said, "Hey, we've been offering this I'm embarrassed to tell this story. We've been offering like $25 off if they like an early bird special if they'll sign up for winter camp or summer camp before a certain date." And there's some important psychological reasons why early birds matter. Um, and a board member said to me, "Well, I'm a pastor and I could care less if a kid gets $25 off. But do you know what I do care about? You charge me for every leader I bring, 1 leader for every 7 campers. That comes out of the church budget. Why don't you try offering a free leader for groups as your early bird?" Guess what worked? That did. It was a simple test. We knew this was having a nominal effect, and this one had a significant data increase. Plus, it made our customers happy.
Yep.
I'm reading a book right now called Unreasonable Hospitality, and I just want to put a plug in there for you as a listener. Unreasonable Hospitality. Watch the interviews with the author. Read the book. This is the missing piece. I'm going to get myself in so much trouble, Carl. I asked, I don't know, 25 leaders, CEOs of camps, this question. Right now I'm going to start making up data. So I don't remember exactly how many answered it well and didn't, but here's what I heard. The question was this: hey, camp leader, what industry are you in? What industry are you in? The number one answer: I'm in the camping industry. I'm in the camping industry. No, you're not. You're in the hospitality industry. You're not in a camp industry. Yes, there's an Association of Christian Camps or Association of, ACA, but that is not your industry. You're in hospitality. And so, leader, I'd like you to go and become a customer of your camp. Register, nobody goes, go to the event, feel it, feel the bed, feel the service, and you tell me whether or not you're delivering on a ministry promise that is hospitality driven. Require every new employee to go to one of your camps. Require it, pay for it. Every new employee has to spend the night in your lodge or cabin or whatever. Let them come back and say, here's what I saw. Camp leaders, one of the reasons you're not growing is you're not focusing on hospitality. You're focusing on fill in the blank, whatever that thing is. Capital campaign, board meetings. I don't know what you would answer that. But if we, oh dear Lord, if we focus on the hospitality, how are we making people feel? How well are we anticipating their needs so that they want to come back? Oh, please.
That's good.
So
That's good.
what's holding you back, leader? Why aren't you growing? Well, here's a couple of reasons. Well, maybe you have another reason. Or even better, Carl, wouldn't it be cool if listeners started going to the website, GreaterCamp.com. What is our website? GreaterCampPodcast.com?
GreaterCampPodcast.com. Yep.
Thank you. On there's a form. Fill it out and tell us what you want us to talk about. Fill it out and say, hey, I'll be a guest on there. I disagree with you. You're a complete idiot. You're a heretic. Whatever is bothering you, tell us. We'll invite you on the show and let you have 35 minutes to tell us how wrong we are. That's fine. Go. We just want camps to grow.
Yeah. So,
and here's the shameless plug.
Yeah.
The shameless plug is we've paid the dumb tax. If you want to avoid paying a lot of it, dude, I have lost millions in my dumb tax thing. If you want us to help, I'm going to tell you what Inspiring Growth is looking for. 3 things. If you want to grow, you are a growth-minded leader. Okay? I don't want to work with anybody who I have to convince to grow. If you're a growth-minded leader, you're ambitious, you see the capacity is unused. Number 2, you are selling to groups. In other words, your revenue for selling to groups is at least $1 million a year. When I say groups, I'm talking about retreat groups, guest groups, but also some of our clients run their own summer program, but they only sell to church groups instead of individuals. Selling to individual moms is so much more expensive. The acquisition cost to get one camper as opposed to one leader who brings 100. So you're a growth-minded leader. You do at least $1 million in group sales, and you have the capacity to grow. In other words, you have 50% unused beds throughout the year. I invite you to reach out to us at the Grow Your Camp Podcast and then scroll past the I got an idea and go down to talk to us, fill that form out. Carl or I will call you back. We will talk to you one-on-one. This is not some huge, machine where you're going to talk to somebody 6 miles down the line. You're going to talk to us. And we're going to evaluate and help you see where you can grow. Now, that's the Inspiring Growth focus. Carl does a lot more. And I'm happy happy that Carl and I are teaming up. Somebody said to me the other day, I don't, I don't get it. You guys are competitors. And you know what I said to them? We started as competitors, but the more we got to know each other, the more we got to trust each other, the more we enjoyed each other, we realized our mission is actually to inspire and improve growth. You do it through systems, I do it through stories. And I said, why don't we just together? We were like, let's encourage the camp community to listen, to learn, to do what we're talking about, and then to invite us in if you need help. It's budget season, camp leaders. If you're listening to this in August or September, we know you better be setting your revenue and expense budgets. So, give us a call.
Yeah. Frankly, Mark, I kind of learned that philosophy from camp. This idea of working together instead of treating each other like competitors.
Yeah,
When
camp is that way.
when I worked at camp, I saw the camp that I worked at investing in other camps. I saw other camps investing
Yes.
in that camp. I saw camps getting together and helping each other. Yeah, I could just go on and on about that. And that taught me a really big lesson, which is, hey, I would also argue that is also about scarcity mindset versus
Mm,
whatever the opposite of that is, right? Scarcity says
generous.
I have to protect my turf,
Yeah.
right? There's a small amount of pie and I want as much of it as I can. And so I've got to be really careful about what I do and I can't share too much. We serve a big God who's got billions of people on this earth and billions more coming. They all need help. There is more than enough people for us to help, for us to work on. There is no reason we have to hide from each other, why we can't share. And so, what I love is we both want to help camps. And it's not just the two of us either, is it, Mark? I mean, might be the two of us doing this podcast, but this is why we have people like Oscar from Life Edge on. This is why we had Casey from Tic Tac Toe Marketing on, and we're going to have more folks. Our goal is bringing on camp professionals. That means camp directors. That means camp marketers, camp salespeople, but that also means agencies that are helping camps. We had Kaleidoscope on, consultants that are helping camps. They we want to talk to anybody that is about helping camps grow, and we want to help people that are helping camps grow.
I got an idea.
Uh,
Why don't we call this the Grow Your Camp podcast? Okay, let's do it.
Mark, let's land this plane. If
Yep.
you could leave camp leaders and their boards with one question to wrestle with after this conversation, what would it be?
What are we afraid of? What are we afraid of? And I would invite you to go beyond, I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of letting down someone. I'm afraid of getting fired because I made a decision to do something that didn't work. I have a leader. He says, I let my staff experiment at least 3 years at a new event. I'm not going to try it once. And if it fails or doesn't meet expectations, I'm bagging it. He's not afraid to experiment and try, but he does look at the numbers. So I would say, what are you afraid of? And go underneath the surface. I'm afraid of looking like a fool. I'm like, wrestle with that thing inside you and then call on your courage. As Brene Brown would say, call on your courage. Because so much of the voices that are going on in the heads of people in the universe is the criticism of leaders who are trying to do things. And other people are either jealous or critical, and they are way behind us. So what are you afraid of? Call on your courage. And then I would say, test, keep track, see what works, see what doesn't, repeat what works, stop doing what doesn't. My goodness, if you've got a camp of let's just make this up, but if you've got a weekend in October for father and sons, and you're filling half your camp, but you've been doing it for 20 years, test sharing that weekend with a guest group. Then you have all 250 beds filled, double the revenue, instead of leaving half of it empty because somebody on the program team says, we're not going to share with a guest group. This is our program. What are you afraid of? Call on your courage and test. Camp leaders, you can do this.
That's good, Mark. What else do we need to tell folks before we close off today?
Please go to our growyourcamppodcast.com and talk to us. We don't want to guess. We don't mind getting yelled at. I mean, we do a little bit. I mean, it's a little painful. But go to the Grow Your Camp podcast. And here's the thing. All of our episodes now are on the website. We have shorts, videos. We have a summary of every single episode, not a transcript. So every topic has a summary. If you don't want to watch an hour video or you don't want to listen to an hour podcast, at 1.7, so we're talking so fast you can't even hear us. You can look at the summary and grab a couple ideas. All right, Carl, I'm going to do something crazy here on the spot. I want to give you $500, and I'm not talking about $500 of ideas. I'm talking about a $500 donation to your organization. If you will execute an idea you're hearing, tell us about it and how it worked or it didn't work, I'm giving you $500, and I'm going to do this for 5 camps between now and the end of this year. So $2,500 worth of donations to camps from the Grow Your Camp podcast. But here's the thing. Try some of this stuff, you guys, and tell us if it works or not and how it worked. And if you do, you're going to get a $500 donation to your mission. growyourcamppodcast.com. And also, can you share the episode with folks? My hope and prayer, as Carl and I started this, was we prayed, Lord, help folks to get woken up, to share this with their board, their donors, their staff, and other camps, to create some sort of discussion around how fear and scarcity is actually holding back the growth of your camp. So, on behalf of Carl and me, thanks for listening to the Grow Your Camp podcast. Let's grow camp together.